National Assembly leadership faults the social investment program of the federal government as the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs meets to explain the plans of the Buhari government in giving out palliatives. Promise, she said, that part of the program is laced with intrigues. And the federal government appears uncertain on the day the lockdown order will be relaxed, as the SGF says it is only President Muhammadu Buhari who can determine whether or not it will be over after 14 days. Lockdown orders in President Buhari's hands. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Akimbalo in Lagos, and we are staying on top of the situation as regarding the coronavirus to bring some of the latest information that you need to know. The figure of the confirmed cases in Nigeria, as we know right now, stands at 238 after 6 new cases of 2 in Kwara, 2 in Edo, and 1 in Rivers were reported late yesterday. It brings you down some of these calculations and the breakdown that you can see right there on your screen. But some good news is that another COVID-19 patient has been discharged from the Lagos Isolation Center in Yaba after testing negative to coronavirus. Today, the Presidential Task Force did not brief in Abuja like you always see live here on Channels Television. They were in Lagos, and the leader of the team, the secretary to the government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, says it is only the president that will determine when the lockdown will be over. Mr. Mustafa says only President Muhammadu Buhari alone will make a decision as to when the lockdown would either be extended or stop at the expiration of the 14 days.
I wish to emphasize that the nation is at war with an unseen but very potent enemy. To successfully prosecute this war, we must own it. We must participate in it. We must create awareness. We must obey rules and regulations. We must stay at home when ordered, and we must not conceal any information from the medical or disease control authority. One person who is infected in a community can endanger the entire community regardless of its size and status or position of the people living there. Coronavirus is real and is dangerous. Let me appeal to Lagosians, indeed to all Nigerians, to play our role in defeating this pandemic. To win the war, we must abide by instructions to stay at home, maintain social distancing, personal hygiene, and report all suspected cases to the designated health authority. Before I end my remarks, let me at this juncture, on behalf of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, and members of the Presidential Task Force, truly and sincerely commend the Governor and the people of Lagos State for a remarkable, resilient, and resourceful fight against the coronavirus.
Well, all may not be well as regarding the social investment programs of the federal government, simply called SIP, in the face of its utilization for the palliatives promised by the president within the period of the lockdown. Federal lawmakers today are not happy with the SIP program and have faulted it. The Senate President, Ahmed Lawan, says the poorest of the poor in the country have not been sufficiently captured by the program, so there's a problem. The leadership of the National Assembly is calling for an urgent review of the federal government's social investment program and has observed that the program has not been able to identify the poorest Nigerians. The principal officers of the National Assembly are making these observations during their meeting with the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. Well, we'll come to that in a moment and dissect for you what the comments of or the findings of the National Assembly leadership was earlier today with the Humanitarian Affairs Minister, and some of the things that she also said. She came out to say there were some intrigues about the program that she has not properly understood just yet. We'll come to that in a moment. yesterday you heard that the federal government says that it plans to withdraw a total of 150 million US dollars from the Sovereign Wealth Fund for distribution to the federal, state, and local governments. The disbursement from the Federation account has experienced a sharp drop recently from 716 billion naira in January 2020 to 581 billion naira in March of this year. That's well over 100 million there that's been slashed. So let's speak to the man who is in the know of this, who can give us a sense of what this means. Tonight we have joining us, we will join him, the Managing Director of the NSIA, Mr. Uche Orji. He will be joining us shortly on the program. Okay, he's here with us. Mr. Uche Orji, thank you so much for joining us tonight. The sovereign account, a lot of Nigerians have had their eyes on it, hoping that this is some monies that we can go to and use at some point when we are in need as a nation. But we understand that that account has also experienced a lot of spendings recently. But now more monies might be withdrawn, 150 million US dollars, we understand. Give us a sense of just how much we have left and the plans from the president and the recent announcement.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure if you can hear me. The connection is really poor. So
absolutely. Go ahead. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, brilliant. So there are three things. First of all, the fund will set up partly for a time like this. There are three funds that are run within the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. The first fund is a fund called the Stabilization Fund. That fund holds 20% of our assets. The second fund is the Nigeria, and the third fund is the Future Generations Fund. The asset allocation so far has been 20% into the Stabilization Fund, 40% into the Future Generations Fund, and 40% to the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund. All three funds are ring-fenced and they're run under separate investment policies. The funds are intact, they are fulfilling the purposes for which they have been invested, and they continue to earn returns. They've been profitable every single year since we set the fund up. We have not reported 2019 earnings, but 2019 earnings is currently being audited. But based on what we believe, you'll be seeing earnings north of $80 million that was earned in that fund. So all three funds were profitable. Now, the Stabilization Fund is designed by law to provide stabilization support in times of economic stress, such as a time like this. There are certain sections of the law of the NSIA that says that when these moments occur, the Minister of Finance, obviously acting on the orders of the President, shall demonstrate urgent need and write to the NSIA to provide money to the government from the Stabilization Fund. Now, let me explain the Stabilization Fund to you. Altogether, what has been contributed by the government so far to date that we have received is $1.5 billion. Of that $1.5 billion, 20%, which is $300 million, is in the Stabilization Fund. On top of that, we have earned a return so far of $51 million. So what we have in that fund is $351 million. So the government can call for that fund according to sections 47 and 48 of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, having demonstrated the need to call such a fund. So we are ready. We've been ready for this, and I think this is really why the fund was set up. The only sad thing is that we have not been able to see significant contributions year to date from the inception of this fund, and we didn't start this fund early enough. And as a consequence, the day that the fund is in the so the impression that the fund is experiencing a lot of spendings is really not the right. For investing, the Future Generations Fund is doing very well, it's profitable every single year. The infrastructure fund continues to invest in key areas of investment, agriculture, healthcare, roads.
We're having some connection issues with Mr. Orji that will come to you in a moment. A lot of Nigerians want to know, it's mentioned some how much the contributions stood, what the law stood at, what the law prescribes in this kind of situation. Now that we're in this kind of situation, how much we have, it needs to also give us an understanding of how much we may have left, and in the coming days, what we need to expect. Those are some of the issues that we would like to discuss with Mr. Orji if we get him back as much as the connection permits us. But let's look at the palliatives and whether or not those of you who are watching from home, whom you have been expecting that the palliatives will have gotten to you, and maybe at some point you are in doubt of what is happening. Let's break it down for you. I have joining me Mr. Shane Fagbero Byron, a former presidential aspirant and a former governance advisor to the DFID. He joins us here in the studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Byron, for coming on tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
When the National Assembly leadership says the SIP program is faulty and it has not captured the poorest of the poor in the society, how does this come to you, and what are your immediate thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the National Assembly is probably best placed to get the kind of feedback in terms of the penetration of the SIP and the palliatives. Let us be mindful of the fact that they represent different constituencies in the country. So I can imagine the kind of pressure the National Assembly members will be feeling now from their different constituencies. People who are not in the National Assembly, people who are not in government, people who are influential, have people coming to their houses, reaching out to them at this particular time. So I would like to take, or I would urge the government to take the National Assembly's feedback very seriously. But there's another reason why. Before this minister was appointed, and about a couple of 6 months to a year ago, we had issues with the SIP. And that was, at that time, I think it was a senior special assistant to the president, that is Hajia Weiss. She was in charge, essentially, before the minister was involved. And she did raise alarm, too. There were alarms, and she was doing some investigation in terms of why SIP funds, because it's not a new structure, it's not a new avenue to, it's based on the conditional cash transfer scheme, policy. And, it's been around now for about 5 years. But the same kind of questions in terms of the transparency, in terms of the reach, in terms of the penetration, are the intended beneficiaries actually getting those monies, those funds? Those issues arose about 1.5 years ago. And the anti-corruption space were actually challenging, Mrs. Wise to, do a bit more in digging deep. Now, what we don't know yet is whether the gaps that were identified during that period were actually addressed and plugged. I mean, what's the outcome of that? So when the National Assembly, members and the Senate President actually raises that alarm, it means that they are getting this feedback, and I think we should sort of take them seriously.
So you are very concerned that what the president said 2 Sundays ago might not come to pass in terms of getting to the poorest of the poor, because they said they have not been captured into that program, and that is a program in which they wanted to use in disbursing.
As in the first place, there are 2 things. Number one, there's a register. There's supposed to be a register of those who are captured in,
But they say that register does not capture the poorest of the poor.
Precisely. So that,
are you worried about that?
I'm absolutely worried about it.
Mr. Byron, just a moment.
Have access to that register?
Just a moment. We'll take a breather. But when we come back, there are more fundamental issues, because thousands and millions of people who are watching tonight who are expecting that they are at home, they cannot work, but they are expecting that they will get something. Their hopes may be dashed, and we'll look at how it can be done better when we come back from this break, everyone.
Okay.
Join us again. Much everyone for staying with us. If you are one of those who are expecting stimulus package, palliatives, or whatever language it may be called, this is some of the initiatives created by the government at the center and in some states of the federation. But we're looking tonight at those from the center, if you are one of those who have been listed on the register to get some of these, it's either the package for farmers or the package for the indigent Nigerians or the package for the elderly in the society, whichever one you may belong, or in fact the Empower, what is happening tonight is there is a reality check. And from the National Assembly point of view, things are not right. They faulted the SIP program, the Social Investment Program of the federal government, that it has not captured the poorest of the poor. And we have Mr. Shinafagbero Baron as from a governance advisor to the UK-owned DFID. Thank you so much, Mr. Baron, for coming on tonight. Also, we were talking to Mr. Uche Oji, who is the managing director of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Agency. Thank you so much, Mr. Oji. Mr. Byron, just a moment. Let's get some thoughts about some of these issues as regarding the $150 million US that the federal government has asked to be withdrawn for some of the palliatives or some of the stabilization in this period. It's a very, very interesting period that we are in. The Fitch rating of Nigeria downgraded, the IMF forecast, the fear of the fact that the oil price going down, and the fact that the post COVID-19 era, what it may become for Nigeria. How much do we have left if this $150 million US is withdrawn, and will that give us some sign of succor in the post-COVID-19 era?
Is there a question for me to answer? Right. So let me, first of all, can you hear me? Because the
absolutely, please go ahead.
Unstable. Yeah. No, I think in terms of what is available to the government, it's only the stabilization fund of the NSIA that is available to the government. And when it's drawn, especially the methodology by which it is being called, which is to use it for FAC augmentation, it means that every stakeholder in the contribution will benefit. So all local governments, all the states and the federal governments in the proportion of their contribution will benefit. The stabilization fund, like I said, is the only fund available to the government to draw for short-term economic relief. And what is available in that fund is $351 million, which is 20% of the original of the $1.5 billion received to date. And those who are keeping records will also note that there is a recent $250 million that was voted to the NSIA that has not yet been received, so it's not included in what is being counted. So $351 million is what is in that fund, consisting of $300 million of contributions made by the government. The first tranche of 200 was made in 2013, when the fund started in 2012. And the current government made two separate contributions between 2017 and 2018. So that is how the contributions have accumulated. That fund was always invested in short-term instruments, so they're not designed to be long-term or illiquid. They're supposed to be short-term liquid instruments. And so we invest in only in A-grade rated bonds, which means we can liquidate those bonds within a few days and make the money available. From what we understand, the government will need this money in June. So we're prepared to make this money available with 7 days, with less than 7 days notice to the government. But all that they can draw from the NSIA is $351 million in the stabilization fund today. But the Future Generations Fund and the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund are separate ring-fence funds, and those continue to operate. Now, as to whether that is sufficient, obviously you listen to the minister's address. There are many sources of funds that the government is drawing to make up for the current economic challenge. And let me tell you something. This is not unusual. Every single sovereign wealth fund that I know is having to provide funding to help their governments get through this tough period. Recently, I think I was watching on your program, there was a rider that the Norwegian government has called funds from the Sovereign Wealth Fund, as have others. The Russian government have also called from the Sovereign Wealth Fund. This is an unprecedented situation. There is nothing that is anything like what we're seeing today. I have never seen the world economy stop, literally just stop. So every other sources that we can call to help will help. The United States government just recently passed a bill for $2 trillion. So
All right.
discretion.
I think we're having some issues again with the connection there. But I must sincerely thank you, Mr. Uche Oji, the Managing Director of the NSIA. Thank you so much for your thought. Nigerians know how much we have in that fund and how much we have left and what we can do with it. Thank you for sharing those insights tonight on the program. Let's get back to you, Mr. Byron, on the issue of the palliatives. The federal government has said fuel price be cut down so that Nigerians can benefit and all of that. The issues of the moratorium on loans, the stimulus package for the poorest of the poor. And with what we have seen so far, today we've heard from the National Assembly that things are not right with the SIP programs. What do you think can be the immediate, because people now need those things right now?
Absolutely. Now you've listed a basket of palliatives that go through this broad spectrum of society. Some of the palliatives are going to end up in consumption. Some of those palliatives are going to end up as stimulus into the society. One thing you didn't mention is that government too owes certain people money. You don't want people who are owed money to end up on the poverty line. You don't want to boost the poverty line, no. Now, what needs to be done, and the advice I would give governments, they have to decentralize this operation for SIP. Number one, the register that they're supposed to have, let's have that register on a state-by-state basis and give governors custody of that register.
But Mr. Byron, apologies to butt into your thought. We need the palliatives now.
Absolutely.
The second, because some people cannot buy food.
Absolutely.
Some people cannot feed. So we cannot collect any register. If the one
they said the register is in existence. What you do?
No, but they say it does not capture the poorest of the poor.
No, the point is that you have to start from what is known. It is when you know what is there, then you know that who is not captured. And who best can know what is not captured than the governor of a state, than the local government chairman of a state, than the National Assembly representative of a state. So for me, most of the states right now are setting up committees to look into consequences of COVID-19 and consequences including things like palliative. Now, you cannot centrally distribute palliatives for 200 million Nigerians and expect to do an efficient job of it. That thing should be managed, should be distributed. What the federal government needs to do is to ensure proper accountability of it. But the actual implementation and putting those, getting the money, getting the funds, getting the resources, getting the food on the tables of the people, in the hands of the people, should be done at a more decentralized level.
Let's close the program now, Mr. Byron, in 30 seconds.
All right.
Should, God forbid, the lockdown of 14 days be extended by the president, what do you think could happen?
Well, it should not be extended without a moratorium. There should be space for recouping. Let me tell you something. People have stocked up, but electricity is a problem. Some people don't even have access to stocking up. Now, what is the position? If you distribute the palliatives, you want to give people an opportunity to stock up or to buy food. Are you distributing cash or are you distributing food? This is a good opportunity to procure a lot of food from our farmers. It's like central markets.
They're distributing grains that are being stored
not
up.
Just distributing grains. There are farmers on the farms. Go into the farms, procure these foods from the farmers, distribute them on a state-by-state basis where the states have food already. Each state at this point in time should start creating storehouses. Storehouses and central locations. Just as they are creating places for sick people, they should also create spaces for food and
Mr. Shina Byron, a former presidential aspirant and former governance advisor to the DFID. It's a pleasure having you share your thoughts on this very interesting issue tonight.
Thank you very much.
But that's our show tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimbale. Bye for now.